Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a video and podcast show that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, it is my privilege to have a very successful businessman and industrialist and an author with me. Ajay Poddar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ajay is from IIT. He's a businessman with multiple businesses from concrete products to LPG. He's the founder of Environics, a radiation management practice for correcting natural and man-made radiations to improve health of people. And most importantly for me, he's an author. I have a lot of respect for people who write. So Ajay, delighted to have you on the show. Let me start with saying, what would you say are the three key milestones in your career?
Well, I think one was that even before I began my career, I told my father after I graduated from IIT that before he had a factory, and I said, before I want to get into business, I want to go for a business trip to Europe and UK and a leisure trip for about 3 months.
Okay.
So I prepared for it for about 2-3 months, fixed up appointments with very large corporations and things like that.
Right.
As lucky, they were kind enough to give me time. And of course, traveled my way around. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence. And I learned how that, I was dealing with people. I was sitting, knowing nothing about the subject I was talking about, with directors who were in their 50s and 60s. So for a 20-year-old to hold your own against them gave me a lot of confidence.
Wonderful.
So that I would call as a kind of a milestone. And then I began my career. There was a factory which my father had set up for making pre-stressed concrete poles.
Right.
And then I developed concrete sleepers in that. And then I had an opportunity to set up my LPG manufacturing plant. So the key thing there was that I worked with workers. I had 200 workers in the concrete plant and another 150 workers in the LPG cylinder manufacturing plant, and I knew each one of them by name.
Okay.
And I think I must have been to about 10% of their homes, in their villages, seen how they live, welded with them, poured concrete with them, kind of worked with them.
Okay.
And it also gave me an opportunity to dabble with technology. So trying new things in those industries which were not prevalent then.
Correct.
And succeeding in many of my experiments, so to say.
Wonderful.
So this is the other one I remember. And the third I would say was that I set up a brand called Suvidha. I was in the LPG manufacturing, so we were the first private company to start LPG bottling and distribution in India.
I see.
And at one point of time, that brand had about 8% national recall.
I remember the brand, yeah.
Yeah, so actually what happened was that we were competing with the big boys like SR, like Shell, like Mobil, with very meager resources. But we managed to hold our own for some time, quite some time.
Okay.
So that was, I would say, would be a milestone.
Terrific. So let's move on and let's talk about your new passion, which is Environics.
Yeah.
Tell me about this venture.
So actually what happened was that my cylinder manufacturing unit became a BIFR unit, SIC unit, because of overdue payments and stuff like that. And people told me that it's wrong, all wrong as per Vastu. So I said, as an engineer, I'm not ready to say ki yahan gadda khod do, you make a pit there and you make a race thing there and everything will be all right. So I became curious, so I wanted to say that if Vastu was the science of architecture, I want to know the whys of it rather than the what.
Correct.
So I went into the traditional masters and I sat with them with translators and understood the whys of the science, not the what.
Okay.
Also, I was going to Europe for some of my collaborations, and I came across this phenomena of geopathic stresses and ground energies and instrumentation to detect that.
Okay.
So using traditional knowledge and modern science, we funded a lot of universities and we did a lot of research So it was more of an interest and a passion.
Right.
And then when we found, we wanted initially to disseminate this knowledge to architects and Vastu practitioners so that they can use it and build better homes or better factories or whatever. But they were not interested. They were largely client led.
Mhm.
So we then formed this enterprise, and there was an architect, Manisha, who's also a director in our company. She came along. She was interested in similar subjects.
Right.
So that's how it began.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we got people to work for us. I used to run an NGO in the hills in the Garhwal region, where with my cousin Pawan, and we got some people to come from there and said, "Do you want to become city peons or you want to learn something new?" So we started small and validated what we did and went
Correct.
along.
So tell me, you said that you're using traditional knowledge with a lot of learnings from the current periods. What exactly do you do in terms of environics?
So in Environics, what we do is that we look at the natural energies of the earth,
Okay.
and many of them are disturbed because they are disturbed, the elemental balance is disturbed.
Mhm.
And the second thing is that, or the ground energies are not good. And we also have things called geopathic stresses. So these are natural phenomena which occur. And you may be surprised to know that about 20% of the Earth's surface is affected by geopathic radiations.
Okay.
So our ancients had ways of detecting that. But one of the things which they did was that they observed where animals used to graze.
Mhm.
And whole townships, they would allow sheep to graze, and wherever the sheep would not eat grass, they would know that this area is not fit for
Nice.
habitation.
Okay.
Even in our villages right now, they say that गाय को बांध दो और अगर घास खा जाएगी तो जमीन शुभ है.
I see.
So, it's so that was one learning, and there was a lot of traditional stuff. We researched on forts, we researched on churches, and we found that they were built with these principles in mind.
Okay.
So that's where we started, and we learned a lot. So we didn't discard traditional knowledge as saying that it's not scientific,
Okay.
because I think in the modern scientific way, we discard empirical knowledge. So
True.
what has been seen by thousands of years and thousands of times just can't be thrown. We need to validate it and see whether it works.
So, when you talk of geopathic radiation or emissions,
Hmm.
what does it mean that, this is harmful for people? Is it something that's linked to gravity? Is it something which is linked to the earth being denuded of its elements?
So-
Does it harm us?
Yes, geopathic stresses are harmful.
Okay.
So that's what, when I said that animals and children, they are sensitive to it. People are sensitive, but we've lost our sensitivity. We've sold it to logic.
Right.
So must have a reason for everything. So what happens is they occur because of 2-3 things. One is very concentrated mineral deposits,
Okay.
like coal or iron ore. So you'll find in that coal and iron ore, those areas, people fall sick more often.
Mhm.
And it's not just due to coal dust or iron ore dust. Secondly, there are underground water streams.
Okay.
So these are really the veins of the earth. They are cavities under the earth. So when the earth's magnetic flow is disturbed, when it tries to come to the surface.
Mhm.
So that is a geopathic region. And the third is there is something called Hartmann lines. So these are very thin lines, 1 millimeter thick,
Mhm.
which run north, south, east, west.
Okay.
So there are 3 kinds of grids. They form grids. So they have grids 5 meters apart, 10 to 12 meters apart, and 18 meters apart, which varies, of course, because of the topography. So if you are on top of them, then you are affected. Otherwise, you're not.
I see. Which means that this is really some kind of a science which you have been able to evolve out of what we traditionally look at Vastu or Feng Shui or something.
So
Is it?
it is, you see, Vastu and Feng Shui, these are also cultural aspects depending on the shape of our land and things like that. But in the ancient Vastu principles, the knowledge of geopathic stresses was there.
Mhm.
But it's not been recorded, and there are no ways of measuring it.
Okay.
So even today, what happens is, what we've tried to do is that we only use those things which we can scientifically validate. So we use instrumentation, and with the instrumentation, we see the before and after. So maybe as per the Vastu principles, you may have a Vastu perfect house, but the energies may be bad.
Right.
So you have to explore why. There can be many other reasons. So we have a checklist our engineers go. It's not an individual consultancy based model.
I see.
It's like making cement or steel anywhere. There is a protocol and people follow that protocol and do the work and
So,
validate the results.
so let me ask you a question. I mean, supposing I'm sitting, in my house which has been built, and after I've spent all my life savings to acquire my house, etc.,
Hmm.
someone comes and tells me that this is the wrong location.
Hmm.
Can that be corrected?
Yeah, that's our business. So we don't ask anybody to even move a piece of, move a chair or a table or a bed. We just say be where you are, because we every energy. So that's our business. We have ways by which we survey and then we correct. We have chips which we have developed,
Mhm.
which change the nature of those energies or those energy flows.
Mhm.
And the checking is done by checking the pulse rate of people before and after.
Mhm.
And of course, it has to be a large sample size. It's not so valid for a home because your pulse rate can vary because of a number of reasons.
Right.
But in a factory or in an office where there are sample sizes statistically significant,
Mhm.
plus we look at the health conditions of people and then we go back after the review for six months later.
Okay.
So if we are able to locate that health condition with the geopathic stress
Mhm.
or with exposure to AMR or whatever, then we look for improvement there.
Very interesting. So, Ajay, one more question for Environics before I move further.
Hmm.
Without giving names, can you give me an example of the kind of stresses you saw with some people and how it got corrected?
So, like our major success has been in, refineries. We've done almost all the PSU refineries. We've done 3 international airports. We've done steel plants.
Okay.
So there, what happens is many of these are process plants. So the finished product in from one plant is the raw material of another.
Okay.
And if there is a breakdown, then it affects the whole thing.
Correct.
So breakdowns are very critical.
Mhm.
So what we saw in the course of our survey is that suppose you had 6 furnaces of the same make acquired in the same year,
Mhm.
5 would run okay, 1 would break down, and there wouldn't really be a technological reason. It happened in our own factories also before I knew all this, that we would send a pump for repairs and the supplier would say, "Sir, pata nahi, I don't know what's happening. We repair it every time. I don't know why it breaks down."
Mhm. Mhm.
So 80% of the time we found that the correlation is with geopathic stress
I see.
of these non-technologically explained breakdowns, so to say.
Mhm.
So we were able to correct it, and what we started doing was we looked at the breakdown record 6 months before
Mhm.
and 6 months after.
Right.
And there is a lot of data out there. Same with people,
Mhm.
attrition, absenteeism, so what we call as unlucky seats
Mhm.
in certain offices,
Right.
that nobody is stable in this cabin or it's this
Right.
seat.
Huh.
So we found a lot of correlations and we started measuring everything
Mhm.
with data which is generated by the customer,
Very
not by
interesting.
us.
Very interesting. So let's move to your book now. You've written a book which
Yeah.
is Empower Yourself: New Life Solutions for Health and Well-being.
Yes.
Tell me about this book.
So I was interested in researching on spaces in the 90s. Of course, I did that to put right my own factory and things like that because it had become a BIFR unit. I had contracted tuberculosis in 94 and I had done Reiki at that time and I was able to cure myself in 2 or 3 weeks. So I got interested in other healing systems and the instrumentation which we use now. And also I'm a musician, so I saw the healing power of music and colors. So there were many things which there was a lot of research and knowledge which I had acquired.
Right.
And there was a friend of mine called Rohina Grewal. So she is an author of about 8-9 books. About 6 of them were published by Penguin.
Mhm.
And in my conversations with her, she said, all this you're talking about should become a book. So I said, I've never written a book, though I write some poetry and stuff like that. But So she took me to Penguin, and then we talked, and I slowly wrote it chapter by chapter in my own time because I do my businesses.
Mm.
And then, of course, half the manuscript got stolen at Paris airport
Oh,
with my laptop. So I had to rewrite it. So
wow.
anyway, it took about 4 years or so.
Huh.
So that's what. So we've written about 11 chapters.
Mm.
So one is to do with rituals, one is to do with colors, one is to do with spaces, one are the healing systems, and various other things. And put it together. People said it could have been 11 books, but we said let's start with one. So
That's amazing. This is talking to you is such a revelation for me because I mean, I've read about this, but I didn't have any idea that this is such a major science that you have been working on and developing. That's quite an amazing journey. So, when you talk about your book, you talk of colors, you talk of spaces.
Hmm.
Give me one or two examples of how, how colors can benefit me or affect me, or how spaces can affect me.
So colors are, actually there are the seven
Correct.
organs of the body,
Yeah,
and we also have the ancient chakra system, which are
correct.
the
The seven
energy
chakras.
vortex, which is in the aura, which is also called the ionic body.
Right.
So these seven chakras relate to seven planets, they relate to the seven Vibgyor colors,
Mm.
and they relate to the seven notes of music, which is Saregama Pada Ni Sa.
Mm.
And they will relate to seven shapes, square, hexagon.
Mm.
It's all there. So there are many correlations. So what happens is, the common thing is that these seven things, whether they are notes or colors or organs, they have the same vibratory frequency.
Mm.
So what happens is that our body, certain parts of our body gets diseased. That means the vibratory frequency there is not optimum.
Okay.
So colors can be used to restore that, to resonate with that part of the body and to restore the vibratory frequency.
Wow.
So this knowledge has been there traditionally. We've been having colored water. People have been talking from violet top to bottom. But our further research showed that the colors displace themselves from the traditional positions because they are short. So we call it a color deficiency.
I see.
So what happens is, if you are deficient in one color, I won't go into much detail, but if you are deficient, the immediate manifestation is that you crave for that color.
Okay.
So you may be having 20 shirts,
Uh-huh.
but you will wear those two shirts of those colors, maybe blue or yellow, which you are deficient in, because your body is trying to make it up.
Amazing. That's such an amazing understanding for me. So let's move to another part. And you're a businessman, and you started a company. A lot of people will listen to you and me talking, and they are startup entrepreneurs. So I have a couple of questions for you on startups.
Yeah.
The first question is that what are some of the basic mistakes a lot of startup entrepreneurs make?
See, they give up too early, I think.
Okay.
I think people fail businesses, businesses don't fail people.
Hmm.
And they base their plans on optimism.
Right.
So either they don't have the required, so they'll say this will happen, that will happen. They will hire some consultants who will give them a good story,
Correct.
all that. So
Correct.
I guess it's good to have a mentor. Choose your mentors carefully, and yeah.
And as a businessman who's come from the traditional family business to a new age business, if I can call it that, what is your view on a startup entrepreneur going solo or getting a co-founder?
See, actually, it's about making people as your partners.
Hmm.
So though I did come from a business family which has a tradition of about 150 years old, but by the time I got into business, our traditional businesses had got nationalized. My father used to own coal mines.
Hmm.
So I kind of inherited a plant which it was pretty much for me to run it the way I wanted, of course, without any business experience.
Correct.
So I'd been in engineering. I was the first person probably in my community from Calcutta who joined IIT. Nobody knew what the hell it was all
Right.
about.
Right.
So I would make people as part. So we had professionals always employed, and we had always people. We ran it in a professional way, not like a family business. like everybody else, we draw salaries, we do not do number two. So that was my discomfort with the businesses which I inherited, because they dealt a lot with, things which were in short supply, and there were very severe temptations to do certain things which I just resisted, because not because I thought was right and wrong, but I just got better sleep.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
I've got a few questions now personally for you. My first question is that, after so much success that you've seen, where do you draw your inspiration from?
I've been fortunate to have in my life some very good mentors or gurus, not one. So I've not blindly followed anybody, but I've listened, had the pleasure of listening to and had their grace, and my Reiki masters, my people from Sri Aurobindo Ashram and Sri Ravi Shankar and many others. So some of their things, I think they've said the right things at the right time, which I've had the grace to internalize and understand. So I think that is one. And of course, second is to be very grounded, make the right, not believe that it is because of me that XYZ is happening, but there is a larger consciousness. So if things don't happen, also you don't take it personally.
Nice, very nice. My next question is, what does success mean to you?
Success means to me to see that I can make a difference to society. I can bring some change in other people's lives. Success doesn't mean owning a Mercedes or owning a nicer flat or something like that.
Correct.
So to me, success is how I've been able to make a difference. And my yardstick of success has been that I've been very averse to debt.
Okay.
And whenever I've had one or two of my businesses have failed, I've had debt, I've sold my personal assets to see that I don't owe anybody anything. So I guess my barometer of success, or what I can call where I've achieved success, I've not made a hell of a lot of money, but I don't owe anybody any money, and nobody can tell me that I've cheated them.
Wonderful, wonderful.
That's my...
Terrific. My next question is, what would be 3 words that define Ajay?
3 words. I would say perseverance, definitely.
Yeah.
So I don't give up easily. And sincerity and passion.
Wonderful. So Ajay, I have time for 2 more questions for you. If you were a role model to millions of children who closely followed your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
I'd been a very careless person earlier, so I'd probably be more systematic and focused, I guess.
Okay, well said, well said, well said. And my last question to you, and this is in the context of the pandemic that we are all going through. How are you rethinking your life in the new world order?
Our generation, and I think you belong to the same generation, so we've seen a lot of changes in our life.
Correct.
We've seen a lot of changed world orders.
Right.
So I think, and the pace of change is actually increasing rapidly. So what change we have seen in the last 20 years was much more than in the 50 years before. And I think what is going to happen in the next 5 years is going to be more than what happened in the last. So I don't look at one change, and I don't look at COVID as a defining moment, in the sense that partly I think it's a creation also of the press and many other things, because if you look at flu or typhoid or tuberculosis, there are more deaths and nobody talks about that. So I would say that with change, as it comes, be ready if one is ready to adapt. And I think the more the world changes outside, the more we need to go within and find solutions from within. The solutions are not outside. That's what I believe.
It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I mean, I've learned so much in my conversation with you. I wish Environics and everything else that you do lots of success.
I just wanted to tell you finally that one of the things which we want to do is to reach touch 100 million lives by 2023 as far as the goal is concerned. Of course, there are personal goals also, and we would like you to be a brand ambassador for that, to help us.
Happy to be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.